Hey everyone, my name's Will Kozlowski. I'll be presenting Hurricane Camille, Monster Storm of the Gulf Coast by Philip Hearn as my oral presentation. Camille began taking aim at the United States as a tropical wave in the Atlantic Ocean detected August 5th, 1969. It was eventually named a hurricane on August 14th. Camille quickly developed into a dangerous Category 3 storm, pounding Cuba with 150-mile-an-hour winds, leaving 3 people dead. But as Hearn states, she was just getting warmed up. Hearn felt it was important to point out some of the other significant events going on in 1969, like the Woodstock Music Festival, the space race in full effect, and President Nixon's dealing with the Vietnam War. There were many interesting stories that came from Hearn's book, but Dr. Maggio sort of personified the feeling toward Camille, as we see here in this slide. To understand the mindset of the Gulf Coast residents like Maggio, Hearn looks at its history dating back to 14,000 BC. Oh, and by the way, science did not always provide the only explanation for natural disasters, as certain Native Americans illustrated. The Mayan storm god Hurricane terrorized the coast of Mexico centuries ago. The start of the 1900s also saw the most devastating storm of the century prior to Hurricane Camille in Galveston, Texas. As far as more recent history, Wade and Julia Geis may have been responsible for more lives saved during Camille than any other people in the affected area. They drew upon their experience with Hurricane Betsy in 1965 to develop new storm preparedness guidelines, along with the use of satellite photography. One of the more significant developments that came from the devastation of Hurricane Camille was the introduction of the Saffir-Simpson scale. It was developed by Dr. Herbert Saffir and his friend meteorologist Robert Simpson and intended to measure wind speed and potential storm surge. The next few slides will illustrate how the storms are categorized and what the potential damage may look like. As stated before, there were those who believed they would be able to ride the storm out. Hurricane parties were held like the one organized by Robert Taylor. He and his guests spent most of the party trying to avoid being swallowed by the Gulf of Mexico. This slide shows the backdrop of another famous hurricane party at the Richelieu Apartments. 24 people chose to stay there, and only one small child survived. As we see here, the property damage was also catastrophic, leaving the seafood industry reeling. Camille wasn't finished, however. She produced the worst natural disaster in Virginia history, claiming an additional 106 lives. Interestingly enough, this book was published in 2004, and the final chapter discusses, quote, the next Camille. As we look at some of the devastation from Katrina in 2005, the Camille Project report in 1999 specifically named New Orleans as being particularly vulnerable to another massive storm. Two things that I think really stood out from this incident in this book had to be the addition of the Saffir-Simpson scale in terms of preparedness and mitigation for storms like Camille. Also, the Camille Project report highlighted some of the potential weaknesses of the Gulf Coast's hurricane readiness.